Live now to our senior political reporter, Xoli Mngambi. He's at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation in Killarney. Xoli, good evening.
Well, a very good evening to you, Kathy. And as you've mentioned, we're coming to you live from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and we are in conversation with the former president, Thabo Mbeki, as we reflect on the life and times of Umama Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, having passed on just yesterday, Kathy. Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thanks
for giving us your time. I want to start with this question, Mr. President, and that is, what is your memory of your first meeting with Winnie Madikizela-Mandela? What was that meeting like?
Well, it was, as I recall it, this would have been 1961 at home, at their home, not the present house, the old house, 8115 Orlando West, yes. The occasion must have been over lunch, because a number of times, let me say, I stayed with Tumanokwe and Sistine, also in Pefeni, Orlando West, but across the hill, yeah. And they were this side. And so she would call Winnie to say that Madiba would like me to come for lunch. So that would have been the occasion, to meet her at home for lunch, to have lunch with her and the husband and so on, just to have a general chat.
In the many years that you've known her, Mr. President, what would you say were your strongest impressions about her as a person?
Well, maybe let me finish by this story about these lunches. Because I discovered later why. The lunches, because the ANC is banned by 1961. But naturally the leadership, including Mandela, they were meeting secretly. So they would meet, and then I get invited to lunch, to have lunch, that's all. But in the meantime, why? The reason he wanted me for lunch was to sound me out on matters they had discussed, to hear how the youth would respond to the things that they had decided as the ANC. But he would never say so, that look, we met and we decided on this, what do you think? But he just have a general conversation. And she would be there, so she knew this, but never told me until many, many years later, actually until we came back from exile. But it told you something about the person, this question you are asking. Very committed to the struggle, wanted to do, must do something. But in those early years, not the kind of activist that she later became. I think the first picture, I'm almost certain that the first political picture that you will see of Winnie Mandela would have been around a campaign that was run at the time of the treason trial, which was, we stand, the slogan was, we stand by our leaders. It was the precursor to what later became the campaign for the release of political prisoners. And I think the first picture you will see of Winnie in a political context is of her holding up a poster saying, we stand by our leaders. So I'm saying this is an activist, but who knew when to be active and not? As I say, in this context of those lunches, she wouldn't tell me. what it was about.
Yeah. What, in your view, Mr. President, thrust her into the spotlight? When did you start noticing that she's now fully into the struggle? She is a through and through activist.
I think it's the sentencing of the senior leadership, including Madiba, the Rivonia group. I think it's when the Rivonia group was sent to prison, which is a period which really was marked with a decimation of the leadership of the movement, that she emerges really as that kind of activist.
In your role, Mr. President, as party leader, you led the ANC. What was it like to lead the party with people like Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, who were just as strong-willed and very vocal on issues that they perhaps disagreed with the leadership on, as a leader in her own right?
Well, I don't recall that there were many differences, serious differences in the ANC at the time. There was general unity and cohesion in the organization on all of the major issues. I think even in terms of the quality of the membership of the ANC, in terms of levels of political consciousness. So it was actually relatively easy to work with people, in a sense that in a way you could say we were all reading from a common sheet. The problems that have arisen in the ANC since have really been part of a process which had started then, of the gradual deterioration in the quality of political consciousness. It's a problem that the ANC had recognized quite early on, that what was happening was that because the ANC was in power, you were then getting people joining the ANC or staying in the ANC, not driven by the value system of the organization, but the search for positions in the ANC as a step ladder to positions in government in order to enrich themselves. I'm saying it changed over time. And in the end, it produces a lower level of political consciousness. I'm sure you've heard, for instance, Kgalema Motlanthe raising this thing very sharply, that over the years you've had this decline, and it impacts on how the organization functions. That's when you will then find all these divisions and splits and so on, and people pursuing personal agendas, use of money to buy membership and all of that. It's a reflection of that kind of process. I'm saying earlier on, it was not so manifest, that. So it was easier. And you had an organization that was more united, levels of political consciousness higher, and therefore you didn't have these unnecessary quarrels and debates and divisions. It's because of the unity.
I'm going to ask us to pause there for a moment, Mr. President. Let's take a short break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.